The Nintendo DS, it first came out on November 21st, 2004 in North America, and since then, it's got some of the most memorable games out there. New Super Mario Bros., the DS Pokemon titles, Bowser's Inside Story, Super Mario 64 DS, Animal Crossing Wild World, Professor Layton and the Curious Village, just to name a few. Yeah, Kirby Squeak Squad isn't one of those, I can tell you that. Kirby Squeak Squad, known as Kirby Mouse Attack in Europe, is Squeak Squad offensive in Europe or something? I don't see the need to change it to Kirby Restaurant's Worst Nightmare. Anyways, Kirby Squeak Squad was released on November 2nd, 2006 in Japan, December 4th, 2006 in North America, March 1st, 2007 in Australia, June 22nd, 2007 in Europe, and September 13th, 2007 in South Korea for the Nintendo DS, to a collective, that's neat. In the Japanese box art, Kirby doesn't really have much emotion, but in the North American box art, Kirby looks like someone just pissed in his cereal. This is a trait shared with a lot of Kirby box arts. I guess Kirby just doesn't like North America. The DS has a lot of games, including 4 Kirby games, but Kirby Squeak Squad was the only new mainline Kirby title on the platform that wasn't a remake or a spin-off. And it blows. I'm being a bit harsh to Squeak Squad here. It's more like, you grab a dictionary, look for the word mediocre, and the definition is Kirby Squeak Squad. Oh, look at this man just ripping into this game, a part of his favorite video game franchise without any reason. If I didn't have a reason, why would this video exist? Kirby Squeak Squad starts off with Kirby getting trampled. Great start, guys. Kirby Squeak Squad really starts off with Kirby sitting down to enjoy a slice of strawberry shortcake. I bet nothing could go wrong here, something went wrong here. Kirby's shortcake was stolen, and of course, it must be the doing of that totally dastardly King DDD. So Kirby starts his murderous rampage, all over a slice of cake. Justified. You're immediately dropped into the first level, and something looks familiar here. Kirby Squeak Squad reuses assets from Nightmare in Dreamland and The Amazing Mirror, both games on the Game Boy Advance. The Amazing Mirror was the first of the 2 Kirby games that was developed by Flagship, the other being Squeak Squad. The gameplay engine is also based on Nightmare in Dreamlands, which features standard Kirby movement options with running, jumping, floating, slide kick, and copy abilities with hats, and since it uses Nightmare in Dreamland's engine, some copy abilities only have 1 or 2 moves, such as Fire, Ice, and Spark, while some get full movesets such as Sword and Hammer, though with less complex moves than Superstar. While it does nerf some certain copy abilities from being very fun to use to absolute pains such as Parasol and Ice, I'm not too upset about this since a lot of the early Kirby titles have this mechanic, even the one that released after Superstar, Dreamland 3. What I am upset about though is that Kirby doesn't change colors depending on the copy ability. Huge downgrade from Superstar, and all future Kirby titles have this, 0 out of 10, unplayable. Regular gameplay wise, I think this game is completely fine and I actually quite like it. In the second level, we are introduced to Squeak Squad's gimmick, Bubbles. When Kirby finds bubbles, he can store them within a copy palette, also known as his stomach, and use them at any time, consuming the bubble. Bubbles can contain healing items or copy abilities which can be mixed together to create different results. There are also bubbles that can be mixed together that can provide a 1-up. Bubbles are usually used to hold copy abilities for use whenever you lose your current one. Your copy palette can also hold treasure chests, which are open at the end of the level as long as you keep them in your copy palette. There can be up to 3 treasure chests in a level, typically hidden behind puzzles. Treasure chests contain collectibles such as music pieces, spray paints to change Kirby's color, which is very important by the way, ability scrolls which unlock new moves for copy abilities such as Spark or Ninja, or power up the copy abilities such as Cutter or Hammer, and other effects too. The copy ability that gets the effect depends on which scroll is collected. Some of these are helpful, such as the scrolls for Sword and Bomb, allowing for their bubbles to be combined with Ice and Spark, as well as Fire for Sword, to have the elements imbued into the sword or bombs. Some are absolutely fucking useless, such as being able to slightly angle Ice's Frost Breath. Most levels have a large blue chest, and when Kirby picks one of those up, he should really prepare for trouble. When collecting a blue chest, a member of the Squeak Squad will approach. The member of the Squeak Squad will try to take that chest away from Kirby. The Squeak Squad are pushovers. They can all be easily cheesed by just rapidly hitting them, especially Storo. Doc is the hardest one, though that's mostly because of his flight, but his attacks rarely actually do anything. There's something about playing as Kirby here that feels more destructive than usual. At some points in the game, it feels like I'm playing a hack and slash, and just look at this. Other than the destructiveness of a pink piece of gum with eyes, Kirby controls quite well here. I actually really like how Kirby can mow through enemies, it's really fun. At the end of a level, which is marked by a large door, Kirby is tossed into a cannon where depending on when you press that button, Kirby is shot out and a random food item or even nothing is given. It's a little goal game, I guess? After the goal game, if you can even call it that, the chests are opened up as Kirby dances. Alright, back to Kirby's quest to save his beloved slice of cake. After clearing through Prison Plains, Kirby barges into DDD's castle, and this DDD boss fight is way too fucking easy for a boss fight. He's god easy to cheese in the same way as the Squeaks. Anyways, it turns out that DDD didn't know a thing about the strawberry shortcake, go figure, but the Squeaks come in and steal a treasure chest that DDD had that Kirby believes contains his precious slice of strawberry shortcake. Kirby then travels through Nature Notch, Cushy Cloud, Jam Jungle, and Vocal Volcano, fighting bosses such as a big mole, a mechanical version of Kracko piloted by Doc of the Squeaks, a giant hermit crab robot thing also piloted by Doc, and a fiery owl. All of that standing in Kirby's way, and Kirby still destroys all of them because nothing gets in the way of Kirby and his precious cake. After clearing through Ice Island, Kirby comes face to face with the leader of the Squeaks, DeRoach. The Roach. But he's a mouse. Cockroach over here doesn't stand a chance against Kirby because seriously, a lot of these bosses are so easy to cheese. DeRoach drops the chest, and Kirby's just about to reclaim his cherished slice of cake when Meta Knight swoops in and grabs the chest. Guess he's got a sweet tooth. If you decided not to collect the treasure chests around the world, then you're going to have to. To access the next world, Kirby has to gather 5 star seals hidden within chests in levels, one from each of the previous worlds minus Prison Plains. If you're like me and hated missing things and collected every one of the chests, then Kirby is given access to Secret C. Haha, Secret C! Secrecy! Haha, ha, ha. What's interesting is that Secret Sea is a hidden part of Orange Ocean from Kirby's Adventure, where the Halberd had crash-landed after the events of Kirby Superstars The Revenge of Meta Knight, where the Halberd is still there. This is an interesting bit of continuity, good on Flagship for this. Of course, Kirby swims right down to the sunken Halberd and faces Meta Knight in a one-on-one battle. The fight against Meta Knight features some of his regular attacks as well as him using new elemental attacks. Of course, Meta Knight gets his ass kicked because cake, and the chest is finally for Kirby to open, until DeRoach comes in, snatches it, and opens it for himself. Instead of containing a delectable slice of cake, it contained a dark energy that possesses DeRoach, and the possessed DeRoach flees into space. Mickey Mouse Clubhouse Space Adventure, everyone. Meta Knight apparently knew of the chest's contents and tried to keep it away from Kirby, but cake is on the line here! During the battle against Meta Knight, the Halberd was ascending, and using the Halberd, Kirby makes chase because he wants that fucking cake. You are then dropped into the final world, Gamble Galaxy. Kirby clears through with no problem and reaches the possessed DeRoach, known as Dark DeRoach. This boss fight is harder to cheese, but still easy. I beat it with High Jump, one of the worst abilities offensively. After defeating Dark DeRoach, the dark energy leaves his body and DeRoach drops his wand, the Triple Star, which Kirby picks up. Kirby chases after the dark energy, revealed to be Dark Nebula, the ruler of the underworld. It was sealed away in this big chest because people feared its power. The final boss fight starts and it's over. Kirby travels back home on his Warp Star and is greeted by a slice of shortcake from the Squeaks to make up for their trouble that they had caused. At long last, Kirby has regained his cake. There are 4 sub-games in Kirby Squeak Squad, and I bet you can't guess what I'm going to say next. It uses the DS touchscreen. Speedy Tea Time has you try to inhale cakes as fast as you can before Storo can eat them. Inhale a bomb and you'll miss out on the next round of cakes. Smash Ride is essentially bumper cars where you have to try to knock Spinny and his Squeaks off of the arena. Knocking off Spinny and the Squeaks nets you 1 point each, but if they knock you off, their team gains 1 point. Treasure Shot has you try to compete against Doc and try to throw balls at chests in order to get the desserts that come out of it. Boss Rush is what it says on tin, a boss rush mode. It's essentially the arena that's present in most modern Kirby games, but it's way easier until you get to Mecha Kracko where you're gonna regret existing. I absolutely despise Treasure Shot and am fine with the other 2 sub-games. I do like the music in Smash Ride though, it's a remix of Float Islands from Kirby's Dream Land. Boss Rush is weaker than the other installments of the arena. I guess Boss Rush and Squeak Squad have something in common. Kirby Squeak Squad is a fun experience. There's a total of 120 chests, and collecting them all was an okay experience, and I like the spray paints. Kirby Squeak Squad's sprite art, while some of it is reused from Nightmare in Dreamland and Amazing Mirror, it's still charming. Kirby Squeak Squad's soundtrack is actually mostly comprised of remixes of tracks from past Kirby games. Even the main theme itself is a remix. It's a remix of Grassland 3 from Kirby's Dream Land 3. The only truly original track from this game that I can remember from the top of my head is Here Comes the Squeaks. This track plays when one of the members of the Squeak Squad shows up, and it's a good one. I don't find that the low amount of original tracks is a bad thing. I mean, I love being able to recognize Kirby music in my Kirby game. Kirby Squeak Squad introduced 4 new abilities. Animal gives Kirby a fursuit and allows him to dig through dirt. Bubble has a special trait that when enemies are defeated, they turn into bubbles that can be stored. Metal makes Kirby super heavy, he's practically invincible, but he moves slower than a bag of fucking bricks, so it's basically useless. Ghost is a special ability that you can obtain after finding all the ghost medallions hidden within chests. After gathering all the ghost medallions, certain mid-bosses across the world are replaced by a ghost called Ted Han. Ha! You get it? Cause Ted Han, Ted? Ha ha ha. Defeating Ted Han and inhaling him gives you the Ghost ability. Ghost allows you to possess enemies and use their abilities. The enemies move very strangely, and Ghost is overall a neat gimmick, but not very practical. Magic is also here, and while it's not a new ability, it's greatly revamped from its appearance in The Amazing Mirror. Instead of being a one-time use roulette that grants a random effect, it's now got actual moves, such as releasing doves, throwing cards, or a jack-in-the-box attack. The roulette is still here, but it takes the form of its ability scroll move. The fact that none of these abilities return in future Kirby games definitely says something. Well, you've all been waiting for the big question: is Kirby Squeak Squad a good game? I found that the bubble mechanic made the game a bit easy. You could store abilities such as bomb or sword in your copy palette and then use them whenever you lose your ability in a mini-boss battle or the many times you do a dumb. And I guarantee that everyone will have done something dumb at least once in a Kirby game. You're also able to store food in your copy palette, which heals you, including Maxim tomatoes, which fully restore your health. Yeah, I can't see how that would make the game too easy. I also just don't like using the touchscreen for this. It's clever, but it's just not very practical. Kirby games weren't hard to begin with, but I was able to finish Squeak Squad 100% by the way, within less than 2 days. I was able to collect every treasure and clear through every level within less than 2 days. With other games, mainly the recent ones, I still had some trouble clearing through the arena or trying to get the collectibles, and it usually takes upwards of a month. The treasures in Squeak Squad, they're very easy to find. The puzzles in this game are very shitty. Most of the time, the puzzles involve a random guess between one of 2 or 3 paths. It's either that or needing a specific copy ability at that very moment. I usually know how to get these after failing once, but if you fail at getting the treasure because you guessed wrong, you have to replay the whole level. That's where half of my time playing this game went into. There's also a level within each world, typically nearing the end, that is very short. I'm talking takes 1 to 2 minutes to finish short. These levels are usually a glorified puzzle, and if you can even call it that. Some of these are just Kirby using the wheel copy ability to race to the finish line before the treasure chest gets sealed away. Did not like these levels whatsoever, they just felt like a waste of a level slot. The final boss of Dark Nebula was very disappointing. It was a one-phase boss that had very few attacks and mostly behaved like Kracko would, and it took maybe 5 minutes to beat. Dark Nebula's design also doesn't really scream demon from the depths of hell, does it? I mean, compared to Zero 2 or Void Termina or Star Dream, it's just very tame. The game's climax definitely wasn't a high point. Dark Nebula wasn't the only piss-easy boss. Most of the bosses can just be cheesed easily. The only bosses that actually gave me troubles were Mecha Kracko, which was somehow the hardest boss, even though it's the boss of World fucking 3, and Meta Knight. Even the Roach, who's built up to be the big bad, can be easily cheesed, and it's a fucking mouse. Mice eat cheese. Kirby Squeak Squad's greatest flaw, however, is that it just doesn't stand out from other Kirby titles. There's no game-changing gimmick, or a memorable art style, or a theme, it's just Kirby. Kirby's Dream Land started the whole franchise. Kirby's Adventure introduced copy abilities that changed the way Kirby was forever. Kirby's Dream Land 2 introduced the animal bodies, which altered the way copy abilities were used, and also changed the way that many levels were played. Kirby Superstar introduced full-color copy ability movesets and a helper system. Kirby's Dream Land 3 had a cute pastel art style and also had mini-quests that you could do in each level. Kirby 64, the Crystal Shards, had copy ability mixing, where you can combine 2 regular copy abilities and create something that was either badass or hilarious. Kirby and the Amazing Mirror had an open world map and introduced 4 players simultaneous multiplayer and 4 Kirbys that could roam freely across the map. Kirby's return to Dreamland brought us back to what Kirby originally was after half a decade pause of no new mainline Kirby games. Incorporated 4-player multiplayer into regular Kirby levels, an awesome character in Magolor, and started the trend of a super strong gimmick with super abilities. Kirby Triple Deluxe had the Hypernova ability and segments of a few levels dedicated to it, as well as the nature theme in the game. Kirby Planet Robobot had the opposite of a nature theme, where it was all mechanical, as well as having the Robobot armor that played a big part. It changed depending on the copy ability and also became an auto-scrolling shooter with the jet ability and was also fun to control. And lastly, Kirby Star Allies is a celebration of all Kirby series up to this point, featuring references to every previous Kirby game, as well as improving on the helper system and made many iconic characters from previous titles playable. Kirby Squeak Squad is just Kirby! There's no game-changing mechanic. Sure, the bubbles are neat, but you could just go through the entire game not caring about them. The squeaks at the end of each level where you have to fight for the blue chest, it's both easy and only affects one room. Treasure chests are collectibles, sure, but so are the energy spheres and the keychains and the stickers and the treasures in the Great Cave Offensive. Other than the spray paints, the rewards are dog shit. Graphic pieces, it looks like if you watched a YouTube video at 144p. Music pieces, a radio is already a normal feature in Kirby games, and you could just Google the OST. Kirby Squeak Squad does nothing to stand out from other Kirby titles, and that's why it's so weak compared to the others. The art style is from Nightmare and Dreamland, and while there are other Kirby games that use similar art styles and models, those games have something that sets it apart from the other Kirby games. It's fun, yeah, but so are the other Kirby games that do that and more. What's even more frustrating to me is that Squeak Squad is the only original Kirby title on the DS. The only other platformer title on the DS was Kirby Superstar Ultra, which even though it's a remake, it's an amazing experience that improved one of the best Kirby games there are. And what's even worse is that the next mainline Kirby game was Return to Dreamland, which released almost half a decade later, so for half a decade, we were stuck with this! Don't get me wrong, Kirby Squeak Squad is a fun experience, but it's just so tame compared to the other Kirby games. Kirby Squeak Squad had an average review score of 7 out of 10, with critics pointing out the lack of originality within the title, the weak sub-games, and the unnecessary use of the touchscreen. Overall, if you want to play a Kirby game that's fun, Squeak Squad is fine, but there's many other options that you can go for instead of this. I mostly really enjoyed the game because it was my first proper Kirby title that wasn't on a ROM, and I had played it when I was like 4 or 5 years old, so basically, it's because of nostalgia. But if Kid Me had played every other Kirby title before Squeak Squad, Kid Me would be very disappointed with this game. I'm gonna go set up some mouse traps. I don't want mice to make my life a disappointment too. I caught a fucking roach.